Hey everybody, Reed Price here. I play the role of Rob Shandon on Sullivan's Crossing. And you're listening to Corman Productions' Deep Dive TV Podcast with Dave and Stacie.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions with my co-host Stacie here to talk about Sullivan's Crossing, Season 2, Episode 1, titled Guilt Trip, the season premiere of Sullivan's Crossing. The episode's description reads as follows. A guilt-ridden Maggie, Morgan Cohan, returns to the crossing to find Sully, played by Scott Patterson, in the hospital struggling with the feeling that he's forgotten something. Cal, played by Chad Michael Murray, is confused when Maggie gives him the cold shoulder, unaware that Lola, Amelia Williamson, pocketed his goodbye letter. Edna, Andre Menard, and Frank Tom Jackson find themselves at odds for the first time in years, and Sydney, Lindora, and Rafe, I'm pretty sure Rafe, played by Dakota Taylor, struggle to keep things platonic while living as roommates. God darn, that was a long episode description.
Yeah, well, anyway. It's been a while.
Yes.
So they wanted to remind us,
right, who these people were.
Are. I think we got all of the main recurring people except for our buddy Reed Price. He's not mentioned in there.
He's not, and he's still not in the opening credits, which is a crime.
He's not, but neither is Lindora.
Right, of course. The episode was written by Roma Roth. She also created the series, and the episode was directed by Chris Grismer. Now, funny story about Chris Grismer. I remember being on the couch with you when you were looking at the Sullivan's Crossing Season 2 credits. I had no idea what you were doing, and you randomly said the name Chris Grismer. And, of course, that rang, bells in my head because Chris Grismer happened to be my favorite director from Quantum Leap, the reboot, the revival. And I'm like, what are you saying the name? And then you told me that Chris Grismer was directing this episode.
Yeah.
And he's directing this one and the next one as well. And so that's pretty cool.
Do you know off the top of your head which episodes of Quantum Leap he did?
I'm pretty sure he was involved in the finale, the series finale. He also O Ye of Little Faith, which is probably one of my favorite episodes.
That was a good episode, yeah.
I think he might have also been behind Ben and Interrupted as well.
Okay.
I'm not totally sure about that one, but yes. So, shout-outs this week. I have exactly one.
Okay.
That is for Reed Price, who did our little intro blurb at the beginning.
And thank you again for that so much, Reed. We appreciate you. So, this is the season premiere.
It is.
And that's the interesting thing is it just is airing here in the U.S.
Yep.
We're in the U.S.
We thought it would air simultaneously between Canada and the U.S., and it did not happen like that.
We didn't get it. So we're like, I don't know how many months behind the rest of the world at this point. I know for sure Canada and Australia got it at the same time. Yes. I don't know about anywhere else.
Yep.
But like they finished the season and they've moved on.
They moved on with their lives, and yet we're still gonna get thousands of views from those people who enjoy the show.
So here's what I have to say to you: if you've already watched season 2, if you live in one of those places that's already had it, watched it, you're welcome to come hang out with us and follow along this season. But please don't give any spoilers in the comments about future episodes because we are just watching this for the first time. And in the U.S. audience, the other episodes aren't available to us yet. So we are going along with the season 2 airings on the CW in the U.S. is what we are working with here.
You know what's not in my notes?
What?
My whole little blurb about this not being a spoiler-free podcast.
Yes.
So by the way,
it's not a spoiler-free podcast. We're going to do all the spoils.
Yes, for episode 1, not the entire rest of the series. Maybe season 1 spoilers, but
right. So if you haven't watched season 1 and season 2, episode 1, do that before listening to us.
Yes.
And what I was saying is, just keep your comments to this episode and episodes previous. And
right.
Don't give us details about future episodes. While this was airing in Canada, I was trying not to pay attention. But, we're in all the groups now. We're following the whole cast. I did get a couple little spoilers. I don't want to see the stuff because I don't know what's happening. So I don't want to know details about, episode 6 or whatever.
Right, yeah.
But a few things did get through. But I was like, la, 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 I'm not paying attention.
So one more thing before getting into things. Okay, so this is not a Sport Freak Podcast, blah, blah, blah. If you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to the channel and all that jazz. All right, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode.
All right, so it was great being back in Sullivan's Crossing. And if you're familiar with the repertoire of shows we cover, this one's a little outside of our norm, right? This is a pretty straightforward drama. It's got romance. It's very different than the puzzle box shows and the sci-fi shows that we usually cover. And, it's kind of nice and refreshing just to watch something that we can relax and just watch.
Yeah.
And not have to theorize about, what does that mean?
I saw Maggie's third eye blinking. Is that a clue or something? But anyway, yes.
So it was refreshing just to watch something a little more simple and lighthearted. And it was great seeing the cast again. Everybody looks great. And
it was like a reunion with friends.
I know, right? I mean, we are friends with some of these people. How cool
we are.
Is that?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed hearing the theme song again. I sung it and I was like, oh, I remember this.
Yes.
Like, yay. It's been a while. It's been so long, it feels like.
Yeah, it does feel like, but it hasn't really been that long.
I don't remember when exactly we did this because we've done like 8,000 things in our lives since then.
Yep.
And I know part of the reason it feels so long ago is because, like, we are getting it late, right? Like, we already watched this play out as, each week people are talking about this as it happened in Canada. And, like, if you think back to when we interviewed Reed Price and Lindora, they'd already finished filming season 2.
Yes.
And that feels like a decade ago.
It does. It does feel a long time ago. Yeah.
And, like, they'd already filmed this. That's how, like, long ago this has been living in existence.
Right.
And that's just crazy to think about that. But it's fresh for us as far as what we get to watch and what we get to talk about. So
yeah,
let's talk about it.
All right, let's do it. Diving in?
Dive in.
All right. So we begin the episode with Maggie rushing to the hospital. She ends up asking the doctors questions, and it becomes very clear to this doctor very quickly that she is also a doctor because she's asking the exact right questions.
Yeah, he seems impressed with her questions, and he's like, are you a doctor? And she's like, I'm a brain surgeon. Is that what she said?
Neurosurgeon, yeah.
This is Dr. Roth that we meet right at the beginning. He's played by Bill Carr. And this is where I'm going to bring up the point that IMDb is...
awful?
Usually pretty good, but for this series, for some reason...
yeah.
No.
Dating back to last season.
Yeah, we had terrible problems with IMDb last season. This episode shows that it did not improve in season 2 because what they have listed for credits is not reliable. So according to IMDb, this is the only episode we're going to see Dr. Roth in.
Which, of course, doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming Dr. Roth is named after Roma Roth, a nod to her.
Yes, I thought that as well. Yep.
He was in 8 episodes of The Mist and an episode of the Lizzie Borden Chronicles.
Okay. We've certainly talked about that show in the past. All right, so Lola is already in the room and asks why she wasn't with him. And she ends up saying that she was headed back to Boston, of course, leaving out the fact that they ended last season with an argument.
Right.
And then we have our credits.
And you know what? Lola, I've never liked Lola. Love Amelia. She's great.
She doesn't exactly endear herself to me in this episode, that's for sure.
She never does.
Yeah.
Lola is not a good person. And she wants to be.
Yeah.
But she isn't.
She's pretty, though.
She's pretty. Yeah, Amelia's great. But
Yep.
no, I don't have any love for Lola.
No.
And my thought here is like, she gets so mad at Maggie, like, where were you? Why weren't you with him?
Right.
Well, Lola, do you remember Roy?
Right, yes, exactly.
You know, the person who was in your care, who did need 24-hour assistance,
and
that you were never with, and then he just kind of died, and you weren't there.
Right. And
so, who are you to ask Maggie why she wasn't with her father, who there's no reason to think he needs somebody by his side?
Not at this juncture, but by the end of this episode, we're going to think that for sure.
Right, but I mean, they were, it's like, she's like, why should she have been with him?
Right, she doesn't need to be. She has a life. She's an adult. She can roam about.
And if that's the case, Lola, if you want to be considered a daughter, why weren't you with him?
Right, exactly.
Also, with this whole, like, talking to doctors in the hospital, and we continue this theme throughout this episode, if this storyline does not end with Maggie working at Timberlake Hospital...
or at least on search and rescue or something...
I'm going to be upset.
Yeah.
Like, we're making it clear. We're spending a lot of time in Timberlake Hospital.
Yeah, and we keep making references to how understaffed
they are, underfunded. And,
and
she's waiting to start this new job. She better end up working here.
Yeah.
She better.
That would make sense.
Do not work in Boston. You can be a doctor here. They need you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, this better be foreshadowing that that's where we're going. Because I'm going to be angry if we never land there.
So, after the credits, Cal stops by the hospital with flowers for Sully. Cal tries to talk to her, but she just kind of blows him off.
And this isn't taking place the same day, right?
Yeah.
So between the credits and now, some time has passed.
Mm.
And it's an undisclosed amount of time. But it's important, because I'm going to bring this back, that we were reminded in the previously on segment that there was a 37-day notice for foreclosure.
Yes.
How many days have passed?
Yes.
And I feel like that's one thing I struggle with this series all the time, is I'm such a hard time following the timeline. And we've talked about that before during season 1, but I feel like it's really important to know where we are in the timeline, and they don't tell us. At some point, Cal said, it's later on, Cal and Rafe are talking, and Rafe says, "Oh, you've been so helpful here this month." Has he been back a month? Has Sully been in the hospital a month?
Right, yeah.
How long has it been that he's about to get discharged?
Well, how long does it take to recover from a stroke?
I don't know, but they're talking like some time has passed, right? She's comfortable with all the doctors, and he's like, "Oh, I'm finally getting out of here. This whole place is full of flowers." And the whole episode, that's my thing I'm looking at. I'm like, well, how much time passed? Like, where are we in life? Because it seems like a lot of stuff has happened.
Right.
From where we left off, which is where this episode started. Like, it started that same night. But, like, everything's happening in everybody's lives. It's like, definitely time has passed.
Right.
How much time? How many days do we have before, like, somebody's about to kick them to the street?
Right. The doctor finds her to talk about Sully's discharge. His doctor is played by Charlene Cahill. She was in 2 episodes from the finale of season 2 and the premiere of season 3.
Yes.
So we've talked about
also
her before.
playing a doctor, Dr. Brody.
Yes.
In Camden, Maine.
And she was also in an episode of the Sinner season 4, which we also discussed.
Yes.
So we've talked about her.
We've talked about her plenty. She's also in 2 episodes of King and Pawn. And so she's a doctor here. I don't know. She must be good at playing a doctor.
I guess so.
And it's funny. I was looking at this hospital, and I'm like, is this filmed in the same place as the From hospital? It's definitely not. Like, I was literally like looking at the walls and the signs, and it's definitely not. But like, that's so funny.
It makes sense though.
Just to like, just to see that she's playing like the same character, basically.
Right. Essentially. So back to Sullivan's Crossing. Edna and Frank are back. He wants to go back to the hospital to hang out with Sully. Edna is struggling with Sully's system. Later on, not Windora. I was going to say Windora. Sydney is coming to take a look at that. And it becomes apparent that they have some kind of conflict going on with his family. And Edna is annoyed with him over it. Something that happened during the time that they completely disappeared.
The trip, right. So remember, they went on a trip to
Yes.
visit his family. First vacation they've taken in years, which is the explanation for their absence in the season 1 finale.
Yes.
Which was weird.
It's weird that we didn't see any of this play out.
Right.
In either the premiere or the finale.
Again, it's showing some time has passed.
Right, yes.
So they had this trip. Apparently, he was fighting with his relatives, which made him and Edna fight. She's trying to send a thank you card to them. He doesn't want to do it because he doesn't feel thankful.
Right.
We don't know exactly what happened, but they're fighting, and it's not
I'm
good.
curious why we didn't see any of this play out. Like, why didn't we watch this at some point, either in season 1 or before now, like in season 2, the season 2 premiere? It's just weird, like that you have these characters that are in the credits, and we didn't see their story for the last couple episodes of season 1,
right?
And we're not seeing it now.
Yeah,
we're just being told it.
We're being told that there's some friction.
Yeah, and I'm very curious as to what the reason is behind that. And Edna ends up quoting back to him, "Nothing changes if nothing changes," which is a callback to season 1 when he said that to Sully.
Yeah.
And I guess this is a regular saying. We only heard him say it once in season 1, but I guess that's something he says on a regular basis.
Yeah, she's quoting him. And you know what? I really like that saying.
Yeah.
It sounds like, well, yeah.
Duh, but it makes sense.
You got to think about it. Like, well, yeah, if you want something to change, you got to change something.
Right.
Get up and make a change.
Right. So Cal ends up visiting Sully in the hospital. He's annoyed with the flowers, all the flowers that he has in his room because he isn't dead. He's clearly back to his usual charming self. Lola says that she hasn't seen much of Cal around recently. Cal says he wasn't planning on staying, but now he seems to be doing just that.
Yeah, he says he realizes the people here have started to grow on him. Lola's clearly flirting with him.
Cal's completely unreceptive to it.
She's probably hoping he's talking about her. He's definitely not talking about her. Mm-hmm. He's like, the people here are growing on me. I might stick around. Like, no, it's not you, Lola. Not.
Yeah, sorry. But you can certainly call me. I mean, you do have to be less of a crappy person, but still. Sully sends Lola to water the flowers, and I think this is an excuse to talk to Cal some more. Cal takes the opportunity to talk about Maggie, and he learns that the letter he left went missing.
Yeah, Sully doesn't know anything about it. He's like, I don't blame her for being mad at you. You disappeared. Nobody knew where you were. And you know what? I'm going to call out that this is a problem.
Meaning?
All of season 1, we as the audience knew he was going somewhere.
Yep.
He had this date circled on his calendar.
Yep.
We were all season like, what's that date mean? What's going to happen when we get there?
Yeah.
And that's the date that he left on this hiking trip to go spread the ashes, right?
Yeah.
Sully knew about this.
Yes.
There was a whole conversation between Sully and Cal saying, oh, your trip's coming up soon.
All right, okay.
And even as far as I'm pretty sure he was like, did you tell Maggie?
Are you saying this is a problem in the plot hole or an indication of more of an issue with Sully's memory?
I mean, it could be an indication of Sully's memory, but it feels like a plot hole.
Gotcha.
It feels like, yeah, he knew he was going. And it feels like it was common knowledge that he was going.
So if he was going on this trip and then coming back and he was gone for like a day, they're making way too much of
right.
this.
How long was he gone? What is this timeline? I'm so confused with the timeline.
Yeah.
But Sully definitely knew about the trip. Like, it was scheduled, it was planned. He didn't just abandon his job. He didn't just leave. Which is how they're making it sound.
Right. So we cut back to the doctor who wants to run additional tests on Sully because Sully is experiencing memory loss and is agitated, though that's pretty much the usual for Sully, I think. And then we cut to Raph, who's trying to get ready for work, but Sid is monopolizing the bathroom.
Yeah, so they've moved in together.
Right,
apparently, again, some time has passed, and they're trying to adjust to that. It doesn't feel like it's going well.
No. She comes out wearing a towel, and she says they're trying to be platonic. He weirdly takes off his shirt before going into the bathroom.
Yeah, so
he's
trying to get her to change her mind on this. And
so you think that was a manipulative move on his part?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And she fell for it. You could tell by the look on her eyes that she was questioning her decisions as well. And their whole situation is really weird. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, they were sleeping together as friends.
Right.
Now they're living together as friends, but not sleeping together.
Right.
And are not working out great as roommates, that they're literally fighting over time in the bathroom.
Right.
And then there's also this sexual tension.
Well, what is Sydney doing these days? Because she's not working at Rob's, the Shandons or whatever.
She's going to go help with the books at the crossing, but it feels like that's the first time that's happening.
Right, so she's just kind of farting around.
She's just hanging out in the shower all day, apparently.
Yeah, so that's not a good thing for Raph. He got the short end of that stick. So she gets a call from her brother Rob, played by Reed Price. He's calling to apologize. Well, he's not specifically calling for this, but he ends up apologizing for hiring Clover without talking to her. She says, "Yeah, you shouldn't have done that. You should have talked to me. But this is probably for the best because I need to figure things out for myself." And she kind of dodges the question of whether she is mad at him or not.
Yeah, but she clearly is not over it.
Right, exactly.
She's like, I gotta go help Edna. She says, give Finn a hug for me. She basically hangs up on him. And he's like, can we sit down? Can we talk? Let's get together. And she just is totally dismissive of this.
Maggie ends up calling Andrew about Sully. And he ends up being like, hey, there's no way that small down doctors could know more than you and I about the brain. Right. And I'm like, wow. Arrogant jackass.
Andrew.
Yes.
And basically she's like, they want to do more tests. They're concerned something else is going on. And he's like, well, you know better than them. Of course he's fine. Why wouldn't he be fine?
Right.
Okay, first of all, why do you think he's fine? You know nothing about the case.
So
your medical opinion is he's fine, but you haven't seen his charts. You haven't seen his test results.
So this is Andrew trying to be a good guy, trying to be supportive, but doing it in a jackassy, dismissive way.
He just wants her to come home and start her new job because he's hopeful that they get back together.
Yep.
And No!
Right.
No to Andrew. Always, always no to Andrew.
Yeah, he was on my screen for 5 seconds and he was pissing me off.
How can more tests hurt?
Right, exactly.
Even if everything's great, go ahead. Make sure they're great.
Right.
Like, you guys are all doctors. You should know. Like, abundance of care.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You want to do tests, do the tests.
So, my question is, if he has a problem with small-town doctors, why isn't he suggesting taking Sully to Boston, for instance, to get examined?
Right.
He's not even suggesting that. He's just like, meh, small-town doctors, your opinion, blah, blah, blah. Like, is the only one that matters. Yeah. He clearly does not care at all about Sully. I don't blame him for that necessarily because Sully wasn't exactly nice to him, but still, he's a jackass.
Right.
Anyway.
And he's not concerned with Maggie's well-being. He's just concerned with getting her to come back to Boston.
And believe me, I have notes about the conversation that happens later with Sydney, but we'll get there. So Sully is being brought back to his bed by a attractive nurse.
I'm pretty sure this is the physiotherapist.
Okay.
So he's being brought back from physical therapy.
He wants a coffee, but she won't let him have it.
This actress is Jodie Stevens.
Jodie Stevens.
And again, according to IMDb, this is her only episode of this series. She's in 2 episodes of Diggstown, 2 episodes of Air Crash Investigations, and an episode of The Strain.
The Strain. I remember seeing some episodes of that.
It was like vampire-y type creatures that transfers through like little worms in your eyeballs or something.
Sounds very pleasant.
Is that right?
Yeah, it sounds about right. So Frank is there, and Frank, and he ends up revealing to Frank that he's forgetting things, and he's like, he seems to be worried that he's forgetting something big.
He forgot something important. He doesn't know what it is, and Frank's like,
so
I don't know.
So we're going with this. He's forgotten about his financial issues.
He forgot about the foreclosure.
Right.
That's what we're being told here. He doesn't know that the crossing's about to be auctioned off, and guess what? He didn't tell anybody.
Right.
Right? He was keeping it a secret. He didn't want anyone to know. He wasn't, going to his support for support. And before he could lean on anybody or find a solution to the problem, he forgot.
But I'm pretty sure that Maggie does know about this situation.
She knew there were some, she knew things weren't going great, but she doesn't know about the letter, the foreclosure, the 37 days.
Didn't she end up discovering that in, the last couple episodes?
I don't think so. I think she just discovered,
there
were bills piling up.
Okay, gotcha.
But not specifically that it's this bad, that there's actually a timeline in place.
Gotcha. So Frank thinks that he needs to heal his mind to make before he can heal his body, and he has to make peace with his feelings regarding Maggie.
Yeah, and then he abruptly is like, I gotta go back to Edna. I think he realized what he was saying actually applies to himself too.
Oh, okay.
And
that was nicely subtle.
Yeah, and he's like, we're fighting, and I need to not be fighting with her.
Except that doesn't really come back into play.
Well,
he doesn't actually
you don't fix things just because you want to fix things.
Right,
I got you. Acknowledging there's a problem, though, I think is important.
So we see Maggie running in slow-mo, which is pretty talented of her.
Yeah, she's doing one of her signature runs.
Yep.
And that's the whole scene.
And, Then we get to Lola opening up the letter that Cal left and begins to read.
Now, are we supposed to think this is the first time she's opened this letter?
It would be ridiculous
if it was sealed.
Right.
Again, we don't know how much time has passed, but definitely some time has passed. You stole this letter, and you tucked it away, and you didn't throw it away, but you saved it, and you didn't read it until now.
Why? Well, okay, first of all, there's that. Second of all, why is she holding on to this thing?
Right.
It's gonna, burn her. If I were to steal a letter, I wouldn't even do this in the first place.
Right.
Because I'm not a piece of shit. But if I were to take a letter like this for the purposes of keeping it away from Maggie so that you can have Cal for yourself, get rid of the damn letter, so it's not like
You're cleaning the place, throw it away with the trash.
Right, yeah.
Oh, and oops, I didn't know there was something there. It got thrown away.
Yeah.
But if you are going to keep it, I'm sure you'd have read it by now.
Right, exactly.
But they're making it look like she hasn't read it, and she reads it now, and we hear Cal's voice narrating, and here's what the letter says. It says, Dear Maggie, I wanted to let you know how much I enjoy being with you. I just need to put my past behind me to be able to move forward with my future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it stops. I'm confused. Is that the end of the letter, or is that just all we're getting told?
That's all we're getting told. I'm pretty sure there's more.
Because that doesn't explain anything.
Yeah.
And the fact that letter is missing, I don't think that letter would have fixed the problem between their communication right now.
I don't think that was the entire letter. I think that's all that we were being told. We only got, like, the first part of it, is my assumption.
Because, like, if that was the letter, like, that wouldn't be helpful.
No.
That doesn't say, I'm coming back in a day. It doesn't say, as soon as I'm done, with this, here's the activity I'm doing, and when I'm done with that, then let's talk. It still kind of looks like a goodbye letter. Right. If this is all there is.
So we cut to Sully, who's getting a new roommate, Duncan Anderson. He's being brought in for a broken hip. They get all chummy. He's played by Peter McNeil, 212 credits for him. He is credited for this episode and the next one. That means absolutely nothing. Right. Because as we've established, Internet Movie Database is not reliable when it comes to Sullivan's Crossing. He was in Nightmare's Alley, an episode of Star Trek Discovery, and 2 episodes of Haven, which includes a lot of people that we talk about.
He's also in 2 episodes of Being Erica, great time travel show. Yep. As well as 24 episodes of Moonshine and 47 episodes of Good Witch. Okay. So he's got some stuff. Yeah. The nurse from this scene, and we'll see her a couple more times this episode, she's played by Anne-Marie Kerr. She's actually credited in 2 episodes this season, according to IMDb. Right. She's in Bone Cage, which is a movie that Reed Price and a bunch of people we talk about are involved in.
That's a directorial debut of Taylor Olson.
Yes. And he's also in 1 episode, or she's also in 1 episode of Digstown.
Okay.
The nurse sides.
Maggie reunites with Frank. She still intends to end up going back to Boston. And she ends up telling him about their fight, specifically Sully and Maggie's fight at the end of last season before he had his stroke. Frank says that leaving her as a kid really ate at him. She blames herself for what happened to Sully.
Yeah, because she didn't see the signs. So she said, if I wasn't so upset I had seen the signs, which is a little more realistic, I guess, than Lola's expectations of why weren't you with him 24 hours a day.
It's still an unrealistic expectation. You're not Superman. Right. You're not God. You're going to miss things.
And even so, you're not his doctor.
That's not a burden you really need to be putting on yourself. So Frank said that he also left knowing that he was struggling to go to Alberta. And I talked about this last season. It needs to be okay for Frank to be able to go and do the things that he needs to do for himself.
And maybe, and I hadn't put this together till just now when you said that, but maybe that's why he ended up fighting with everybody, because he feels guilty he wasn't there for Frank, or for Sully.
Possibly, but at the same time, there was also, I think, the reason he was going there was to make peace with his family.
Right. There was already some tension. But something happened, though, that everybody ended up fighting. And specifically him and Edna ended up fighting.
Right. I'm wondering, are we going to get back to this? Or are we going to talk?
I don't know.
Or are we just going to drop it? But yeah. She says that they can't lose him again. And Frank reassures him that they won't. Rob seems to be struggling with his new assistant manager. And Cal is there fixing things.
Yeah, he's doing some electrical work. Cal is making his rounds as a handyman, let me tell you.
Yeah.
He's in, every scene with people fixing something.
So I'm curious, who actually employs Cal? Or is he just going around fixing things for the heck of it?
Yeah, he just fixes things. And they give him, $20 under the table, I'm sure. And that's that.
So, he's asked about him and Sydney. Rob is asked about Sydney if they're okay. Rob doesn't know. Rob asked him about Maggie, and he also doesn't seem to really know about the status of where they are, but he knows there's some tension there. And she doesn't really seem receptive to hearing what he has to say. Rob ends up saying, well, maybe we should both try harder.
Yeah, and it's funny because Cal says, oh, we're in the same boat, because Sydney's mad at Rob, and Maggie's mad at Cal, and you know what? They're really not the same thing.
No,
these are not the same thing at all.
No, they aren't. But last season we had that scene with Cal and Rob, and that was a really good scene. I think this is a really good pairing that we need to see more of.
Yeah, they are. These two should be really good friends.
Yeah,
and
being real here, these are my 2 favorite characters on the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Clover for a second. So she's the new assistant manager. We saw...
Man, I have worked with people like Clover, that's for sure.
We learned that she got hired. This is the reason that Rob and Sydney are fighting, is because he hired Clover without consulting with her. And so she was hired as the assistant manager. He asks her here... So she's just sitting at the counter on her phone.
Yep.
Diner's full of people. Mm-hmm. Rob's working. She's sitting at the counter like a customer playing on her phone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, if you're not busy, you could go clean the grease traps. And she's just like, that's not in my job description.
What is part of your job
Right.
description exactly?
And also, like, didn't he write her job description?
Yes. He's the boss.
Right. And he's like, well, go make coffee then. And she does. And I don't know, like, this isn't going to work.
No.
I remember last season.
I'm not impressed with Clover.
I remember last season we were talking about how Rob needs a love interest, and I thought it might be this new person he hired. No.
Not so much.
Not after this introduction.
Do you
to her.
happen to know who Clover is played by?
So this was not an IMDb.
Okay.
Clover was not there. I had to go by the actual credits at the end of the episode. And according to the credits in the episode, Clover is played by an actress named Jansen Blake.
Okay.
Who I could not find on IMDb, period. I could not find a listing for this person.
Interesting.
So I have no information about her.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So so Sydney is having trouble with Sully's system, which is chaos according to Maggie.
Now she should at least be able to like figure out how much debt he's in, right?
Right. Yeah.
Even if you don't know about the foreclosure, like this should be your clue that like, oh, bills aren't getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't come up at all.
No. Well, maybe she hasn't had a time to dig into it just yet. So Maggie talks to her. She's still trying to figure out what she wants to do with herself.
Yeah, they're talking about living with Rafe and how that's going. And she's like, well, we're keeping it platonic, because she doesn't want to complicate her life. But your life's already complicated.
Your
situation with him's already pretty complicated.
Right, yeah. Just by going to live with somebody that you were sleeping with is complicating your life.
Yes.
So, I continue to not understand where Sydney is coming from.
She expresses here basically that she misses New York.
Right.
And they talk about her situation there, and Maggie was like, well, didn't that not go great? And she says, well, because I made some bad choices.
And you're continuing to make them here in Sullivan's Crossing.
She's really good at making bad choices. Yeah. But it sounds like she's missing New York. She's missing modeling.
Mm.
She says she doesn't know what she wants to do with herself, but I don't think this is it.
No. So a couple ends up entering, and this is apparently someone that, Edna recognizes.
Yeah, she recognizes them. They apparently have camped here plenty of times before, but it's been a while.
Yes, because
and
she's now pregnant.
A couple of John and Ellis.
Mm-hmm.
John is played by Sebastian LaBelle. He, according to IMDb, is in 3 episodes this season. He is in a new film coming out this year called Sharp Corner that Reed Price and Bob Mann are both in.
Well, we're gonna have to check that out if we can.
It becomes available here.
Yeah.
He's also in 3 episodes of Chop Away, and he is also in Bone Cage.
Okay.
And the pregnant wife Ellis is played by Bree Neal. No Mick on that one. She's supposedly in 4 episodes this season. She's in 1 episode of The Flash, 1 episode of Lucifer, and 1 episode of Once Upon a Time.
Okay. So they want to rent a VIP cabin, and Edna, of course, lets them do it. And I hope she's charging because I don't know if you know, but these guys are in serious trouble. Last season they were just giving.
Yeah, Edna kept giving the VIP cabins away to everybody who asked for one.
Yeah, so please charge these people. They can pay money. Maggie feels a pregnant woman's stomach, and of course we're kind of reminded here that she herself is pregnant.
Yeah, she gets upset.
Yeah,
and that's when Sydney's going to be like, what was that about?
Yeah, so the conversation flips back to Maggie when Sydney asks what's wrong. She tries not to tell her, but Sydney kind of forces her hand.
And kudos to Sydney.
Yes.
Somebody finally forcing somebody to talk about something.
Right. And she ends up revealing that she's pregnant.
And confirming, of course, that it is Andrew's baby.
Yeah, Sydney ends up asking if it's Andrew's. Yep. She asked how
there were some questions in the fan community about that, and we thought it was pretty obvious, but she's telling us yes, for sure, that's what happened.
She asked how that happened, and I'm thinking, Sydney, do we need to talk about the birds and the trees?
Well, we know she doesn't know what she's doing with her life, so maybe she doesn't understand these things.
And she's talking about getting back to together with Andrew. My literal note there is blah. Sydney asks about her feelings for Cal. She says she has no such feelings, but Sydney knows this to be a lie. She points out that he left, that he only came back for Sully, and that she has to think for 2 now. And she says that Andrew and her make sense, and my literal note here is, no, he doesn't.
Never did.
Right. Like, okay, I'm sorry, but he's a piece of crap. He can still Andrew can still be a father to
Right,
his child.
exactly.
Without
She
her
says,
being
I
with
don't
him.
want my baby to grow up without a
Right.
dad like I did. Okay, first of all, Maggie, you had a dad.
Yes.
You lived with him till you were like 11.
Yes.
And then you had a stepdad who you call dad. You did not have a dad.
Right.
Okay, first of all, let's not pretend that you had, just grew up with a single mom. But secondly, yes, he can be in your baby's life without being in a relationship with you.
Yes.
That is not a requirement. And if we remember back all the way to episode 1, the pilot of this series, she didn't want to move in with him. He wants to move in together, and she's like, nah.
Right.
You don't want to live with him. Before, you were pregnant. Before you met Cal, even.
Yes.
And now you just want to, go live happily ever after together?
Right. Well, that won't work. That won't work.
No. It's not going to work. You're being really stupid. Just no.
Okay.
Just no. Now, being in different countries might complicate things a little bit. With, as far as, raising a child. But they don't seem to have problems with that. They seem to be able to go back and forth by blinking their eyes. So
Stacie's official position on Andrew and Maggie is no. No. That also happens to be my position.
I mean, that's always been my position.
Yes.
But specifically here, it's like, what are you even talking about, Maggie?
Yeah, she doesn't make any more sense than Sydney makes. But so she wants to keep this a secret for now. Yeah, that makes sense because it is very early in the
She
pregnancy.
hasn't even told Andrew yet, is what we learn here. And of course, Sydney's like, no, let's have a baby shower. Let's celebrate. And she's like, no. No. And she confirms she is happy about this. She does want to be a mother. She's just not happy with the timing. And she's concerned about what it's going to do to her career because she's starting a new job.
I'm concerned with how this baby's going to come out, given the fact that it's Andrew's, but, whatever. So we cut to search and rescue. Jackson calls his mom, Connie, while touring campuses with his dad, Tom. And, of course, we just finished talking about, we didn't finish talking about this just now, but Jackson, of course, is played by T. Tomlinson, the star of Halloween Party, which is a movie that we pre-recorded a long time ago and dropped just recently. So if you haven't seen that, go and check that out. T. Tomlinson is...
T. Thompson.
Thompson.
No, Thomason. You were right.
Oh, okay.
You know what? I have such a hard time with that family
because of
they
Shelley.
have two different names that are almost the same. And the dad, Tom, the fictional dad here, is played by Hugh Thompson.
Yes.
Unrelated, as far as I know.
Yep.
But those names are just hard.
So his dad ends up on the call, and he tells Connie that the divorce is official. They are single again.
And she looks upset by this.
Right. And this is the only scene that we see any of these characters in. We could have moved this off to somewhere else.
Yeah, this is something that you and I were talking about before we started recording. Is they went out of their way in this episode to show us all of the recurring cast from season 1.
Yeah.
The only person we don't see in this episode is Finn, the little boy.
That's true. We don't see him.
And it's just it feels kind of weird, right? Like this scene, a couple of the scenes is just they're only here to remind us these characters exist.
Right.
And it just feels a little, like you said, what's the point of the scene? If we're not going to deal with anything going on with these characters other than this 30-second scene, we don't need this 30-second scene.
Right, yeah. It could have been cut for time for something else
now,
that we are talking about.
On the opposition, I you could say the same thing about Rob's scenes, but I'm not going to complain about seeing Reed Price.
No, of course not. At the same time, I kind of think that was I think that was kind of unnecessary because where we left them in season 1, we kind of wanted to have an idea of where their relationship was at.
We said this a lot during season 1, is some of these side characters, like the Shandons and Connie's family, they're there and we see them a lot and they have stuff going on, but we spend so little time with them.
Yes.
That it's like, well, why? Why are we dealing with this at all?
Right. Yeah.
Either let's not deal with it, or let's deal with it more.
Right. Now,
that was the stance, we had taken before.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, and it still fits here. It's like, yeah, okay, let's deal with these things, but we need to deal with them for more than 30 seconds of the episode, or it feels pointless.
Right, yes. And in the case of, Reed Price's character, I vote for seeing him more.
And, we're going, according to Reed Price and Lindora, when we did interview them, after they'd filmed season 2, they said, because we asked, do you get more screen time in season 2? And I'm pretty sure, if I recall, both of them said it's probably about the same amount of screen time, but the stories get bigger, so it feels like more.
Ah, gotcha.
So it sounds like we are going to get more from them.
Good.
Good, yeah, because we love them.
Yes, of course. So Sully's hanging with his new roommate, Duncan, who's in a lot of pain. He hasn't been taken for his surgery yet, and this will be a reoccurring thing throughout the episode.
Yeah, his surgery hasn't been scheduled. He broke his hip, and he's just sitting here. That's
right.
That's the care they're giving him.
I don't quite understand these scenes in that they kind of treat Duncan like he's on the verge of death, even though all he did was break a hip.
Duncan's acting like he's on the verge of
right.
death.
And, it's like he has, cancer and he's about 2 seconds from dying or something.
He's kind of given up on his life, is what it sounds like.
I guess so.
And I think he's supposed to be kind of a symbolic for Sully. Like, you don't want to be this person that just kind of gives up and doesn't feel like you have anything to live for.
Gotcha, okay. So that's the point of these scenes, I guess. So, basically, the nurse comes in at Sully's insistence because he's in pain, and he says he's not scheduled for any medication until later.
Yeah, and she's like, I'll ask the doctor when she gets back from break, but that's not for an hour. And I feel like, again, this is to tell us, like, hey, this hospital's understaffed.
Yeah.
And, Maggie could save the day.
Maybe,
guess.
Perhaps.
Maggie could come run the entire department.
All right.
Or maybe Connie needs to come do it because she's not doing enough things.
Right, yeah, obviously.
Because she's running the fire department and the search and rescue and the EMTs and all of it.
That is clearly enough. She's a very lazy person. So Maggie sits on her porch. Cal ends up joining her, wanting to explain, why he left.
And she still doesn't want to hear it, but he kind of finally forces her to listen a little bit.
Yeah, he mentions that he did it for Lynn, to spread her ashes. And he came back thinking maybe he could make roots for himself here. And he starts to try and talk about his feelings for Maggie, but she kind of cuts him off because she knows where this is going.
Yeah.
And tells him that she's gonna go back to Boston, and that she and Andrew are talking about getting back together again. Cal asks, "Is that what you want?" And she, of course, says, "Yes." I don't.
She doesn't say it's what she wants. She says it's what she has to do.
Right, which again is apt up.
No, you don't.
No, yeah, this is a screwed up way of thinking, and it makes me sad for Maggie. But anyway, he ends up sadly.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm happy for you," and he leaves because he's leaving thinking, "Oh, she really loves Andrew and wants to get back together."
Right. Yeah. That's really unfortunate, and that is not the case at all. I don't believe it. So Maggie calls her mom, who asks about Sully. She actually acts like a human being in this scene.
For a second, she does.
Yeah. And then we have Walter coming back into the car.
Phoebe says, your father's getting in the car and wants to talk to you. A reminder that, they totally don't think of Sully as her dad.
Right. But, Walter basically only wants to talk about her career, nothing else.
Yeah, he said Dr. Callahan's starting a new research study, and she's got to interview ASAP. Basically, why are you still in Canada?
Right, and I have my note here. He's being a jackass per usual. Phoebe is at least tolerable in this scene. Compared to most of her scenes prior.
Well, my note is, Maggie, can you please just call Dr. Bob Hollis and get the skinny on that situation?
Right, yeah. Because
we were told as an audience that, Walter's the bad guy, and
yes.
Maggie's not following up on that at all.
Nope. So, Rafe spots for Cal lifting weights, and Cal isn't really sure about his future, though the idea of him joining search and rescue is floated in the scene, so I'm wondering if we're going somewhere with that.
Yeah, Raph is like, "Oh, you did such a great job with Jackson, and you and Maggie make such a great team." He's talking about working together, and he wants them both to join search and rescue, but it's also a hint like, hey, you two are good together.
Right.
And this is the scene where he says, "Thank you so much for all your help this month." So, it's been a month? Is that what we're leaning towards?
I guess, unless he's talking prior to this, but yeah.
But prior to that, he was working at the crossing. He wasn't, helping everybody.
Right.
So, so confused.
Yeah.
But 37 days is not much time left if it's been a month.
Yeah, so it's we're a week away from losing Sullivan's Crossing, basically, at this point. Hopefully we're going to, clarify this at some point, because, yeah. So Frank and Edna are getting pretty snippy with each other. They're
arguing about Sully's well-being here.
Mm-hmm. And they notice some golfers outside. Meanwhile, Sully is playing memory games with Maggie, like the type where you try to match
the game's called Memory.
Memory.
They're playing Memory.
The game is literally called Memory.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and he's getting frustrated with that. Duncan isn't doing well. Sully wants Maggie to talk to the doctors about his paperwork for getting released and this dude's surgery. He gets super frustrated with the memory game, and then Lola comes from nowhere and is like, "Oh, stop pushing him." And Duncan says he's blessed to have two daughters to fight over him, Maggie very pettily says that Lola isn't his daughter.
Yeah, she's very quick to point that out.
She doesn't need to do that here. She could just like let the comment like slide.
Right.
But she absolutely does not. Sully tries to reassure Duncan. And
also Lola, he tells,
at the same time,
like, as soon as...
You're like a daughter to me.
Yeah, Maggie walks out of the room to go check with the doctor, and Sully reminds Lola, he's like, you are like a daughter to me.
Right.
And, okay, but their relationship's so weird.
Yes.
Like, the whole relationship between these people is so weird. Also... Lola brings up the point before Maggie leaves to tell her, like, hey, I know what rehab's like, you don't. And she's referring to when she was a kid, and
when she got hit by a car.
Hit by a car, who nobody knows was Sully. Does Sully remember? Because he seems to have forgotten everything that he's ever known.
I don't know. I don't.
He's sitting there listening to this conversation. But, like, what a stupid comment. I know what recovery's like and you don't. She's a doctor. She knows a little thing about what it takes to recover.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just because you as a child 15 years ago.
Well, not to mention that's presumptuous.
Had like broken bones you had to heal.
Do you know for a fact that Maggie has never had to do rehab?
Right.
Like, you don't know that. You don't know her entire history. It's a presumptuous comment at that. It's just anyway.
And then
the only reason this line is here
to remind us that this happened.
Which means this is kind of clumsy. This is a kind of a clumsy reminder to what we found out in the last season.
Right. And then Lola says she's going to go get coffee, and she's going to bring Sully back one, too. Now, if we remember...
Nothing for Maggie?
Well, Maggie, nothing for Maggie, but remember earlier,
just
like 2 scenes ago, we're told Sully can't have coffee.
Oh, yes.
So, like, did something change between those 2 scenes? Or is this just an example of Lola sucking?
It's an example of Lola sucking.
And paying zero attention to, like, reading the room and knowing what's best for him. Right. Because you think you know everything that's best for him, but you're going to go give him coffee when the nurse literally said he cannot have coffee.
Yes. Well, we all know how good she was at taking care of Roy, so...
This is her, like, wanting to be this great person, and she's just not.
All right. So, anyway...
Frank and Edna go to talk to the men that got off of the golf cart.
And it's the owners of the golf course across the way.
So, one of them is Glenn Perry. And Glenn Perry's played by Dean Armstrong, who is maybe in 5 episodes this season.
Right.
According to IMDb. He was in 7 episodes of Chapel Wait, an episode of Supernatural, 3 episodes of Heroes Reborn.
Oh, okay.
And he was in Saw 3D. Ooh. And we're reminded a bunch of people in this series made Saw appearances at some point.
Now, George we saw last season, correct?
Yes. So he's there with George. George didn't have a name last season. He was just the appraiser.
Okay.
Is how he was credited in episode 110. And it's funny because George, played by Lewis Hodgson, is not in IMDb for this episode, but he's definitely right here. He's in the episode credits. And he's only in IMDb for episodes 110 and 210, but clearly that's wrong because here he is in 201.
Right, yes.
So who knows when we're going to see George again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we met him. So he's the one that Sully had called out to appraise the property.
Right.
Because Sully's trying to get a second loan, remember?
Yes.
So that's why he needed the appraisal. But George was like, you really should just sell this place. So I don't think he's the one doing the foreclosure.
Right.
But he's trying to profit from the sale.
No, he's certainly a vulture circling around.
Right.
For sure.
So he's the one who got Glenn Perry, who he had just sold the golf course across the lake to. And he's the one, like, representing him, I guess. Mm-hmm. He's like his real estate agent or whatever. And they're here scoping out the property.
And Frank and Edna certainly find this sus.
Yeah, they don't know anything, right?
Right.
And they're just like, who are you guys? And he's like, I came to check on Sully. I heard he's in the hospital. They know he's in the hospital and sick. They know he's not here. And they're making it sound like, I'm your neighbor, and I'm just here to see how you're doing.
Right, yeah. Concerned neighbor who has a knife in his pocket ready to stab
Frank and
you.
Edna are like, well, we'll let Sully know you stopped by. And, after they part ways, Frank and Edna are like, well, that was weird. And then the guys are like, I don't think they know yet.
Yes. Yep.
And George says to Glenn, are you sure you want to do this? And he's like, well, somebody's going to do it.
Right.
Well, yeah, but maybe knowing that the dude's in the hospital and you, what's his name, George. Also, he's your client because he called you for something.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, like, go talk to him.
Right.
Like, I don't know. There's nothing good's happening here.
Nope. So Maggie talks to her doctor, not her doctor, but Sully's doctor. She mentions being short-staffed and underfunded. She'll look into the dude's surgery, but Sully's tests came back and they are not looking good. Duncan and Sully talk. Duncan is very fatalistic about his broken hip. Basically, he seems like he's about to die.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just going to die here.
Right.
And if I don't die here, I'm just going to end up in a nursing home. I'm all alone. I don't have anybody. I have nothing to live for.
Yeah.
He basically don't care. He's like, I don't want to feel pain.
Yeah,
so whatever we're going to do, let's just do it.
Yeah, could you just put me, like, out of my misery? Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
it's the whole vibe here. Sully gets up and is like, I'm going to go get you your surgery, which is kind of weird. But anyway, the hospital seems very empty, which is, I guess, more giving us the hint of how understaffed this place is. But pretty soon it's going to be filled with people.
Yeah, right.
So it's really weird.
But the point was to get him to get up and do something he shouldn't do, which is walk out of this room by himself. And he's like calling for help.
Right.
And that's not going to go well for him.
Nope. The doctors reveal a possible Alzheimer's diagnosis for Sully, which is devastating for Maggie. She's talking about getting him in his assisted living facility,
long-term care. She's
presumably this is what's going to keep Maggie in Sullivan's Crossing.
It better,
and not going back to. Not going back to Boston, which, by the way, being here in Sullivan's Crossing is the whole point of this show.
Right.
So could we just, do that already and stop with this whole I'm going back to Boston thing?
Yeah.
But anyway. So the conversation is interrupted when someone comes in and tells the doctor that there's been an incident. Maggie ends up going into the hall.
Yeah, she slowly kind of follows behind the doctor, and there's a whole bunch of staff running.
Yeah.
Like the people we've met as well as other staff, they're running to this incident, and Maggie's just kind of walking down the hall, and she sees somebody on the floor, realizes it's her dad. His head is bleeding.
That's not a good sign.
It's not a good sign. Things don't look good for him.
And that is where the episode ends. Bummer. That's a bummer way to end the episode.
Yeah.
Things are not looking good for Sully
Things
or
aren't looking
anybody,
good.
really.
Sully's in bad shape.
Yeah.
Where are we going with that? I'm not sure. I know he's going to spend more time in the hospital because some of these hospital people we know have more credits. I guess this was just their way of extending the hospital scenes.
Yeah, I'm really hoping they're not saddling Sully with an Alzheimer's diagnosis. I'm hoping that's just an indication of it, and that's not actually the problem.
Right.
But yeah, we'll see as we go along.
We'll see what happens with him.
It would kind of suck to have Sully suffering from Alzheimer's for the rest of the series. I mean, really, this series is mainly about, or I think it is anyway, Maggie and Sully's relationship. So.
Right. As well as her and Cal, because they're the three, lead cast.
Yep.
So those are the three, and everyone else is supporting cast.
Yes, exactly.
So no one knows about the situation at the crossing. It's about to get sold right from under him. He forgot. Nobody knows how bad it is. We got people looking at the books, but they can't make heads or tails of them. So that can't go well.
Nope. Right now.
We were ready last season for some way to solve the problem and make money, and now we don't even know there's a problem.
Yes.
You can't solve a problem you don't know about.
Well, we do know the problem.
I mean,
but
they don't.
Yeah.
This, Frank and Edna and Maggie and the people in this community that care.
Right. Edna and Frank are at least clued into something weird going on, so
right, but they don't. Nobody knows that there's a timeline crunching, and if you don't come up with this money, it's going to be too late. And it was a lot of money, if I recall.
So, Edna, I hope you're not still giving away VIP cabins because you really need the money.
Would there not be more notices, more letters involving this?
You would
assume
that so.
Be it? You got this 37-day notice. There should be some follow-up about, the procedure and what's happening.
Yeah, a 37 notice is kind of interesting. Why not 30 days
right.
or more?
And they showed it in, the previously on, you can really see 37 days. In 37 days, you're done.
That's kind of an obscure day. You're giving him a month and a week for some strange reason.
Yeah. But why hasn't there been some follow-up with somebody? And they know Sully's in the hospital, so... Why are you not talking to his other people that are actually running the place?
Right.
Just there's no communication happening at all. It's so weird.
Yeah.
And Maggie and Cal are not communicating either. They really just need to freaking be honest with each other and actually talk things out and move forward.
But, as Lindora would say, then there would be no
No
drama.
Okay, but we can have drama without the drama being like nobody's talking and nobody knows anything over and over and over and over again.
I feel you. I agree. I'm with you.
I still vote for Lola and Andrew to just go be terrible together.
That's great. Yeah. Okay.
But that needs to happen.
Yeah.
We need to get these two characters out of the way, go be terrible together.
Right.
You'd be perfect for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So anything else to say?
We got one other person that's credited in the episode, but I didn't see them in the episode, so I don't know if this is a deleted scene or what this is, but both in the episode itself and in IMDb, we have a credit for Mother of Newborn.
Okay.
Played by Chrissy Barrett. And this is her first credit, according to IMDb. So I don't know, Chrissy Barrett, where you ended up, but you are in the episode credit, so I thought I'd shout her out. And then there's a couple people in IMDb, but not in this episode, but that's because IMDb sucks. I'm guessing we'll get to these people at some point.
The people doing the Internet Movie Database pages for Sullivan's Crossing specifically suck, not the entire site.
Right. The Internet Movie Database listings for Sullivan's Crossing are broken.
Our listings on Internet Movie Database are fine. You know, they're perfectly fine because we're the ones doing it.
Because the person doing that's awesome.
Yes, exactly.
We have a interesting thing that is on IMDb, but isn't in this episode, and that is John McNeil.
Yes.
Who people probably don't know the name, but if you listen to us, you probably would recognize him. He plays the mechanic creature on From.
Right. And he was in the season premiere of From.
Yeah.
Season 3 premiere,
right.
Specifically.
And he's going to pop up in this season of Sullivan's Crossing at some point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't this episode, IMDb. No. And I even asked him, I messaged John, and I was like, so IMDb says you're in this episode that I just took notes on, and I'm pretty sure you weren't.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I wasn't.
Yeah, and he doesn't even know when he's appearing.
He doesn't know what episode he's in, but he did say he was in a scene for Sullivan's Crossing, but this wasn't it.
Yeah.
This wasn't the scene. Right.
All right, so happy to be back talking Sullivan's Crossing. Hopefully we're going to have a fun season ahead of us. Stacie, you have any further thoughts before concluding?
I just hope they actually move forward with some of these stories and let's get the ball rolling, because this episode, it was fun to be back, but it was kind of clunky.
It was
kind of clunky with there just being let's see everybody, and then our entire plot is nobody's talking or solving anything. Obviously you're not going to solve things in the first episode, but let's move forward, please.
Yes, let's
move
do
forward with all of these storylines and go somewhere new, maybe. Other than just lingering in the same exact problems forever.
Right. All right. We'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of this episode? What'd you think of this podcast? Stacie, you'd be reached at.
Reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of the Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions or on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell so you're notified when new content drops, which, by the way, there's going to be a hell of a lot of it this month specifically. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.